The moment I knew something was wrong wasn't during a board meeting or an audit or even some red flagged email chain. It was while sipping my crappy office coffee, scrolling through a quarterly report that looked too perfect. Every number polished, every line item snug and symmetrical, like someone gift wrapped a financial crime and slapped a bow on it. That's when I saw it. Right there, buried in the middle of the pension compliance annex, a phrase that hadn't appeared in any of our prior strategy outlines. Approved Alternative Growth Vehicle, Craig Tolbert Capital Management. I nearly choked. Craig Tolbert? That name hadn't come across my desk once in 20 years. No FINRA ID, no registration with the SEC, no performance reports. Nothing in our standard due diligence repositories. Just this sudden, shiny entry claiming stable 9.7% growth every month like clockwork. I checked the date. It had been implemented 2 quarters ago during the so-called Portfolio Diversification Initiative. How convenient. And Brent Kellerman, the CFO with the Rolex addiction and the smirk that made you want to disinfect your soul, was already calling it a historic success. Best pivot we've made since the '09 recovery, he declared in the staff-wide Zoom, sipping something that wasn't coffee and patting himself on the back like he'd discovered fire. I opened up the internal ledger and scanned backward. No vote records, no analyst briefs, no asset reviews, just Brent's signature on an implementation summary and a dozen buzzwords about strategic foresight. The investment was already live, already touching employee pensions, and nobody had asked compliance. Not me, not my team, not the fiduciary board. It wasn't just sloppy, it was deliberate. Real quick before we dive deeper, if you're one of the 97% of folks who listen without subscribing, please take a second to hit that button and tap like. It helps the team keep these stories coming, and trust me, this one's only getting started. I brought it up casually at first, in our next Tuesday check-in. Hey Brent, notice the pivot to Tolbert's vehicle? Do we have third-party audit trails for that strategy? He smiled like I was a kindergartner asking if Santa Claus had a tax ID. You're overthinking again, he said. That same dismissive tone he used when I flagged conflict of interest issues on the real estate trust last year. It's a proprietary model. Craig's an innovator. We're lucky to be in on it early. I swallowed my sigh. Still, for ERISA compliance, we need a risk memo filed, especially if it impacts protected plans. Look, if I wanted a risk history, I'd call the Smithsonian. That got a chuckle from the finance guys in the corner. Brent leaned back like he was posing for a magazine cover. Just sign the review summary and file it, okay? Legal's fine with it. Funny thing about legal, no matter how many corner offices they sit in, they don't see what we see until something catches fire. So I went back to my cubicle, pulled up the compliance checklist, checked the fiduciary alignment box, then unchecked it. Then sat there staring at the screen, fingers twitching, feeling like I'd just stepped into a room that looked familiar but smelled wrong. Like someone rearranged all the furniture, just slightly, hoping I wouldn't notice the new blood on the floor. Craig Tolbert Capital Management. No record, no audit, no backup, just a glossy summary and Brent's grin. And now I was supposed to sign off on it like some clipboard monkey waving it through. That wasn't going to happen. I didn't start a war. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even CC Brent on what I did next. I just opened a blank memo, typed the header, ERISA 404C Compliance Assessment, Alternative Growth Strategy, and started outlining exactly what didn't add up. And I time-stamped everything, every damn thing. The second month rolled in with another solid 9.7% gain, and that's when my teeth started grinding. Not from stress, but from the insult. Because that kind of return doesn't exist. Not in this market. Not in any market. Not without someone cooking the numbers like it's Thanksgiving dinner for the SEC. Markets move, assets fluctuate, funds, even boring ones, breathe. But this one? This mythical unicorn that Craig Tolbert allegedly conjured up in his garage. It just coasted. Perfectly flat gains, no dips, no spikes. Just that exact same 9.7% month after month like it was direct deposited from Fantasyland. I asked finance ops for the underlying data, performance documentation, asset breakdowns, liquidity buffers, anything that would prove this wasn't just monopoly money with a fresh coat of spray tan. They said they'd get back to me. That was Monday. By Friday, I got a folder with half a dozen PDFs, all branded with Tolbert's logo, all using the same recycled language. Proprietary structure, exclusive opportunity, market agnostic resilience. But no math, no equations, no asset map, not even a third-party valuation. Just smoke and glitter and Brent's smarmy confidence smiling from between the lines. So I pushed again. Sat through another meeting where Brent showed up late, talked early, and dismissed any pushback like he was swatting at gnats. "You're not thinking like an innovator," he told me, shaking his head with mock pity, like I was some relic from the dusty compliance museum. "You've got to stop obsessing over volatility curves. This is the future of fiduciary management." Right. And I'm the Queen of England with a spreadsheet addiction. Still, I kept it cordial, smiled, nodded, took my notes. But inside, the alarms were howling. Because it wasn't just Brent. It was the silence around him. No one else was asking questions. Not the pension committee, not internal audit, not legal. Everyone was rubber stamping this thing like it came pre-approved by God and Warren Buffett. It wasn't just suspicious. It was eerie. Like I was the only sober person at a champagne orgy and everyone else was too drunk on returns to notice the fire creeping under the door. I ran a side query in our legacy archive system. Cross-referenced Craig Tolbert's firm against prior vendor approvals. Nothing. No procurement record, no vetting logs. He hadn't even filled out a vendor onboarding packet. His firm wasn't just new, it was invisible. I started to wonder if the whole thing was a shell. At this point, I didn't trust Brent to pick a vending machine without kickbacks. I opened my own tracking doc, separate from the SharePoint archive, encrypted offline, titled it Tolbert Exposure, started logging each date, each memo, each email, each non-answer. I noted when Brent signed off, when finance ops delayed, when legal didn't reply. Every small moment that added up to a quiet pattern of consent. By the end of the week, I had 15 entries. 15 different touch points where someone could have, should have, stopped to ask, wait, where's the actual investment? But nobody had. Nobody cared. And that's when it really hit me. This wasn't incompetence. This was the plan. I waited until after hours to call Greg. He's a former auditor, now doing forensic compliance out in Denver, the kind of guy who can smell a shell company through a firewall. We used to swap war stories over whiskey back when audits still happened in person. I didn't even have to explain much, just said, "You ever hear of Craig Tolbert Capital Management?" Silence. Then a low whistle. "Hold on," he muttered. Fingers clacking, I could hear him digging through databases. Nothing in FINRA, not even a pending registration. This guy's fund doesn't exist, not legally anyway. You sure he's handling pension assets? Positive. Brent's got the whole portfolio flagged under a guaranteed growth vehicle through Craig. Jesus, he said, like I'd told him I'd started keeping pet cobras. That's a walking ERISA violation with a side of federal indictment. I hung up with my stomach turning inside out because I knew he was right. This wasn't some paperwork fluke. This was a deliberate sidestep around every guardrail we had. And worse, everyone else was pretending not to see it. So I drafted a memo, nothing loud, no accusations, just a gentle nudge under the subject line. Fiduciary oversight, ERISA section 404C considerations. I use the language we always use when we're trying not to scare anyone but still want it on the record. Absence of third-party audit materials raises potential exposure in the event of regulatory inquiry. Translation: if the feds come sniffing and we don't have receipts, we're screwed. I CC'd Brent. I CC'd internal legal. I even looped in our pension committee chair just for form. Then I waited. 3 days later, I walked into the finance meeting and Brent was already at the front, pacing like a game show host. "And there she is," he said, eyes locked on me. "Our very own compliance Cassandra." He forced a laugh. No one joined him. "Got your memo, appreciate the concern, but honestly, you're overthinking. Again." He turned to the room. "We've got stable returns, strong positioning, and strategic alignment. Let's not bury progress in paperwork." I opened my mouth. Just barely, and he cut me off. "Stay in your lane, please." Every eye turned toward me, some sympathetic, some smug, most just silent. It was humiliation, but not the kind that burns red. This was the kind that calcifies, that tightens your chest and teaches you how to stop flinching. I nodded, just once, sat down, didn't say a word. But inside, something shifted. I stopped talking. I stopped warning, I stopped trying to help, and I started tracking everything. I copied every Slack thread into a private folder, every internal email, every memo sent and not acknowledged. I built a full chronology: day, time, sender, recipient, context, like a surgeon prepping for autopsy. I even recorded a video walkthrough of our SharePoint structure, noting the missing vendor files, the altered permissions, the backdated upload logs. My silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. Because Brent wanted me quiet? Fine, I'd be quiet. But I'd also be thorough. And when this thing cracked, because it would crack, every minute he ignored me would be waiting and writing. The hardest part was writing it like I didn't care, like it wasn't personal, like I wasn't staring down the barrel of a decision that might end my career, or save it. I waited until the office was dead quiet, late enough that even the interns had stopped pretending to care. I took my badge off just to hear the silence better. Then I opened a new document and typed a single line across the top. ERISA Section 404C, Fiduciary Oversight Memo. That was the moment it became real, not a theory, not a hunch, not something I could brush off with a sarcastic comment or a stiff drink. A memo is a bullet. You better aim it right. I wasn't emotional. I wasn't angry. I was cold, methodical. I laid it all out. How the pension funds were shifted to Tolbert's vehicle without review, without a board vote, without a single line of third-party validation. How Brent signed off directly, bypassing our standard procurement and vetting protocols. How legal remained silent despite repeated documentation requests. How the fund's performance data lacked any correlation with market trends. Flatlined at 9.7%, immune to volatility, suspiciously clean. Then I built the timeline. January 4th, Brent's Strategic Growth Outlook presentation. Tolbert's name first appears. February 12th, memo from Finance Ops citing proprietary model but no audit trail. March 2nd, my first request for documentation, no response. March 8th, Brent's verbal dismissal. You're overthinking. March 15th, Tolbert vehicle goes live. No legal review attached. Every point cross-referenced with emails. I pasted them in line, highlighted timestamps, even dropped in metadata headers to show when files were edited or backdated in SharePoint. I treated it like a court submission, not just telling them what happened, showing them in sequence, in color, in unignorable black and white. Then came the final move. I CC'd the usual suspects, Brent, internal legal, our fiduciary board liaison, but I also blind CC'd my personal attorney just in case this thing grew teeth. He's old school. Harvard Law, lives in flannel, sleeps in statute books. If I ended up in front of a regulator or worse, I wanted him already looped in, and I didn't tell anyone, not even my husband. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted protection. I hit send, took a breath, saved a hard copy to a USB, printed another, mailed it to myself, sealed and time-stamped. Chain of custody. Because if this disappeared, if Brent or anyone else tried to claim ignorance, I'd have a way to prove what I knew, and when I knew it. Then I locked the USB in my drawer and walked out like it was any other Tuesday. No one stopped me. No one said a word. The next day, Brent didn't mention the memo. Legal didn't respond. Finance acted like it never landed, but I had sent it. And now it lived in their inboxes, and that silence, that was their first mistake. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for them to pretend it never happened. No reply, no acknowledgement, no meeting invite, just an eerie vacuum like the memo had been dropped into a black hole lined with plausible deniability and legal deodorant. I logged into SharePoint to double-check the archive, and just like that, it was gone. No version history, no metadata trail, just wiped. Like I dreamed the whole damn thing. But I didn't, because I had the printout. Time-stamped, signed, dated. Still sealed in the envelope I mailed to myself, sitting unopened in my fireproof file cabinet at home, next to my daughter's birth certificate and a copy of our mortgage. And the USB copy? Still safe in my purse, wrapped in a receipt from the gas station, just in case someone got cute with access logs at work. That's when I knew they weren't just ignoring it, they were scrubbing it. And that meant someone, somewhere, had taken it seriously enough to treat it like a threat. I started paying closer attention. And that's when the rumors started. Quiet little comments in the hallway, a whisper near the coffee machine. "You hear about Jim from payroll?" someone asked. Still waiting on his disbursement from the retirement fund. Said it's been delayed twice. Then Denise from procurement. Same story. Her payout was supposed to hit last quarter. It didn't. HR blamed a reprocessing error. Denise didn't push back. She's 2 years from retirement and terrified of rocking the boat. I started a new spreadsheet. Delayed disbursements, anecdotal. Cross-referenced it against who had funds in the Tolbert vehicle. Of the 6 cases I heard whispers about, 4 matched. All former employees, all over 60, all told the same thing. We're reviewing the payout timeline due to market realignment. Realignment, my ass. I reached out to a contact in benefits under the pretense of helping with an audit. She hesitated, then cracked. Off the record? She asked. Always. There's been more delays than usual, but we're not allowed to escalate unless it hits a certain threshold. And Brent, he told us not to put anything in writing, said it'll sort itself out. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just thanked her, hung up, and added her quote to my timeline, marked it in red, because that was the second time Brent tried to bury this with silence. The problem with silence is it leaves room for echoes, and the echo I was hearing was panic, distant, muffled, but coming closer. People were starting to notice something wasn't right, but no one was connecting the dots yet. They were looking at the symptoms, delays, excuses, missing checks. They weren't looking at the source. Not yet, but they would. Eventually, they would. And when they did, I needed to be ready. Not with questions, with answers, with dates, with files, with every ignored email and erased memo lined up like gravestones in a spreadsheet cemetery. Because I wasn't just keeping track anymore. I was preparing for the exhumation. I came in late that morning, rain, traffic, toddler meltdown. By the time I hit the elevator, I could already feel the static, the kind that makes people sit straighter, close doors faster, talk in clipped sentences. Something had shifted. And then I saw it. The envelope. Heavy stock, government seal stamped in dark blue across the front, sitting in the middle of the executive suite reception desk like a loaded weapon. My badge buzzed, but the receptionist didn't look up. Her eyes stayed fixed on the hallway. She whispered it before I could ask. They said your name on the call. My stomach didn't drop. It folded, like metal collapsing under heat. What call? I asked. Department of Labor, she said. Someone from enforcement. Asked for documentation around pension oversight. She hesitated, then leaned closer. Said they were reviewing a memo authored by your compliance officer. Didn't mention you by name, but I knew it was mine. I nodded, not trusting my face to hold steady, walked back to my cubicle like it was any other Thursday. Sat down, logged in, tried not to breathe too loud. 10 minutes later, legal booked the big glass conference room on the second floor. Emergency meeting. Brent's assistant flew past my desk, heels clicking like gunfire. No invite came for me. Not a word. They were circling the wagons. Only this time, I wasn't on the outside. They were inside something I had lit the fuse on. I stared at my inbox like it might blink first. Then I saw her. Outside counsel. Jane Heller. Big firm. Big fees. No patience for sloppy corporate theater. She walked through security like she owned the floor, binder in hand, rain still drying on her coat. I stood up, peeked down the stairwell just in time to catch it. The binder. Thick. Organized, and right on top, under a plastic sleeve, I saw it, my memo, printed, hole-punched, highlighted, the timestamp circled in red ink like a bullseye. That was the moment I realized I wasn't invisible anymore. They had found the record, and now they were scrambling to rewrite the story before it got read aloud by someone who didn't care about stock prices or Brent's tea time. No one came to get me, no one asked for my version, not yet, but I didn't leave. I didn't flinch. I opened a fresh notepad and started jotting down names, times, who walked in, who walked out, who made eye contact, who didn't. Vindication doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it arrives with a quiet panic on someone else's face. But dread doesn't leave either, because now the thing I'd kept quiet, clean, controlled, it had a case number, a federal seal, my name in someone else's mouth. They were going to need me eventually, and when they did, I wouldn't guess. I'd read, from the top. It was a Tuesday when the email came, No subject line, just please stop by. No urgent, no ASAP, which made it worse. Like I was already expected. Like they'd been talking about me long enough that formality was just wasted motion. When I walked into the legal suite, the lights were low, blinds drawn. Jane Heller sat at the head of the table, flanked by two in-house attorneys who suddenly had all the warmth of a wet sponge. No small talk, no fake smiles. Just a chair pulled out for me and a printed stack already waiting, my memo on top, again. But this time, someone had bled red ink through it like they were trying to find sin in the margins. "Can you walk us through your version of events?" Jane asked, calm, professional, voice like gravel polished with money. I nodded. I didn't bring notes. I didn't need them. I told them everything, exactly as it happened. No fluff, no drama, just the dates, the asks, the silences. When I first flagged the fund, when I called Greg, when I wrote the original memo, when it vanished. The names on the CC lines, the requests that went unanswered, the delays, the polite gaslighting, the memo I printed, time-stamped, and mailed to myself. They didn't interrupt. One of them underlined something halfway through. April 3rd, the day I noted that retirees started reporting payout delays. When I finished, Jane sat back and exhaled slow. "They have your timeline," she said quietly. "It's solid." That wasn't a compliment. That was a warning. The Department of Labor had my receipts. They'd validated the sequence, and now the company was standing at the edge of a cliff. My version of events had become the version. I didn't ask about Brent. I didn't need to, but someone must have seen it on my face because the junior counsel said, almost too casually, "Brent's not in today." His office calendar, once jammed with golf metaphors and empty buzzwords, had been wiped clean. Not rescheduled, not deferred, just blank. He was gone. I was still standing. They didn't say thank you, didn't apologize, but as I got up to leave, Jane spoke again. "You'll be looped in going forward," she said, like it was an offer. The younger one added, "You're considered essential for continuity now." I almost laughed. Now I was essential? After 3 months of being told to stay in my lane? After being dismissed, erased, humiliated? But I didn't say a word. I just nodded, stepped out, and walked the long hallway back to my desk. This time, people looked up. Not all of them, but enough. I wasn't the joke anymore. I was the warning, the one who didn't yell, the one who kept records. And now, the one they needed to keep the lights on. The all-hands email came through at 6:13 a.m. Subject line, "Leadership Transition Announcement." No header image, no inspirational quote. Just corporate gristle carved with a butter knife. Effective immediately, Brent Kellerman has chosen to take an early retirement to spend more time with family and explore new personal opportunities. There was no follow-up message, no farewell Zoom, no slideshow of Brent shaking hands with executives in lanyards and sponsored polos. Just a digital shrug, sent before most people had their coffee. I watched the reactions ripple out across desks like a silent wave. People staring, rereading, refreshing to make sure it wasn't some kind of test. It wasn't. Brent was gone. By noon, his nameplate was missing. By 2 p.m., his office was locked. By the end of the day, facilities had cleared it out like a crime scene. No one said his name out loud. It was like the man had evaporated into the drywall. The same day, someone noticed Craig Tolbert's site was offline. At first, it redirected to a generic under construction page, then nothing. Dead link. Every page of smoke and mirrors wiped like it never existed. Even the LinkedIn page disappeared, like Craig himself was rolling up the road behind him, erasing every footprint as he fled. Then the announcement leaked. The Department of Labor wasn't just asking questions anymore, they were investigating, officially. The pension board had received a formal inquiry. Someone on the inside confirmed it was about questionable investments in unregistered vehicles. They didn't say my name, but they didn't need to. That afternoon, an internal memo circulated from the General Counsel's office. Updated guidelines for fiduciary review procedures. The wording was cold, clinical, and, line for line, lifted from my original memo. They didn't even bother rewriting it. My phrases, my bullet points, my structuring. Just reformatted and rebranded under someone else's signature. I didn't mind. Let them plagiarize policy. I had the original. I had the timestamp. I I had the sealed copy in my drawer and the digital duplicate still sitting in Jane Heller's binder. That evening, I overheard a director from finance whispering near the elevators. The board's given legal the green light to fully cooperate. Everything's going to be handed over. Full disclosure. That's corporate code for someone's getting thrown to the wolves. Someone like Brent, someone like Craig. Not me. I was still here. No promotion announcement, no public recognition. Just the same desk, same monitor, same stack of compliance folders waiting for signatures. But now, every time I walked down the hall, people didn't avoid eye contact. They didn't smirk. They didn't ask passive-aggressive questions about slowing down progress with red tape. They nodded. Small, quiet, respectful. The kind of nod you give to someone who warned you, the kind you give to someone who didn't blink. The boardroom was colder than usual, not in temperature, atmosphere. Like everyone had finally agreed to stop pretending nothing was wrong, and now they didn't know where to put their hands, their eyes, their egos. Outside counsel stood at the end of the table, binder open, glasses low on her nose. Jane Heller didn't waste time with introductions. No one here needed reminding why we were all crammed into this glass tomb with silent phones and white knuckles. They have her memo, she said, crisp. They have the timeline. This isn't going away. Silence. Then the slow sound of someone setting down their coffee, suddenly no longer thirsty. She continued, flipping pages. The Department of Labor has cross-verified the dates, communications, and fiduciary gaps outlined in the original compliance memo authored on March 18th. They have requested full cooperation under section... She paused and glanced up, which the board has already authorized. Brent's name was printed on the slide behind her. Formal. Icy. Brent J. Kellerman, subject of federal fiduciary investigation. No euphemisms, no more executive smirks or vague misdirection, just black ink and consequences. One of the board members asked quietly, "Are criminal referrals on the table?" Jane nodded once. "They haven't ruled anything out." Nobody looked at me. They didn't have to. My name wasn't on that slide. My memo was in their hands, but I wasn't. Later that afternoon, an envelope appeared on my desk. No meeting, no ceremony, just left between a stapler and an empty coffee cup like it was any other office memo. Inside was a letter, signed by the general counsel and co-signed by 2 board members. 1 page, plain language. They acknowledged my early concerns, stated that my memo formed a material basis for the company's response to federal inquiry, included a line about apologizing for prior oversight regarding compliance communication channels. That was the closest thing to an admission I'd ever get. Beneath it was another sheet. A revised job title bumped 2 levels with a quiet pay increase and a dotted line reporting structure straight to legal. No public post, no cake, no speech, just ink on paper and the steady click of the wheels turning back in my direction. I didn't frame the letter. I framed the memo, the original one, the one they deleted, the one I printed, time-stamped, and mailed to myself, the one they tried to pretend didn't matter, until it did. I didn't hang it in my office, where people could see it and ask questions. I hung it inside my desk drawer, taped to the back panel just above where I keep my USB backups and emergency battery pack. It's not a trophy. It's a reminder. Because in the end, I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I didn't storm out. I documented, I recorded, and when the time came, I didn't raise my voice. I just raised the record.